Resiliency Advisory Board is now order. So Vice Chair Eric Lardy,
Present.
Secretary Garrett,
Present.
Board Member Clampett is under the weather today, unfortunately. Board Member Gong,
Present.
Board Member Meyer,
Here, sorry.
Wow, that's good timing.
Who else?
Board Member Morgan,
Present.
Board Member Williams.
I'm here.
So item 2 is our land acknowledgement. The Resiliency Advisory Board acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of the Kumeyaw, Luiseño, Capeño, and Kapila. Today, the Kumeyaw people continue to maintain their political sovereignty and cultural traditions as vital members of the Saniel community. We are honored to share this space with them, and we thank them for their stewardship. For item 3, I would like to modify the agenda so we take item 9, sub-items A, B, and C prior to item 8. Does anyone have any modifications for the agenda? Any questions, comments on that?
Makes sense to me.
Can I get a motion to approve that?
Sure, I move.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, we will modify the agenda, so all our speakers will come before we have our action items later on.
Good.
Do we have any announcements or comments from staff?
I think on the city staff side, Kelly has some announcements.
Hey,
I do. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Kelly Stonko. I'm a Deputy Director in the City Planning Department, and wanted to update you today on some organizational changes within the City Planning Department. The division that I manage has been renamed to the Climate Preservation and Public Spaces Division. And with that change, I am welcoming the Climate Policy Team, my division. The Climate Policy Team oversees the implementation and maintenance of the city's climate action plan, including the maintenance of our online implementation tracker, and implements various climate programs and actions, such as the city's efforts to transition to cleaner energy buildings. Program Manager Andrew Martin, with over 20 years of experience in climate action planning, environmental review, and transportation planning, will lead the climate policy team in his new role as Chief Sustainability Officer. And Julia Chase will continue to lead the Climate Resilience team as Chief Resilience Officer. We're excited about the opportunities this reorganization presents to more seamlessly coordinate the city's climate action and resilience planning efforts, and to continue to lead in climate action and resilience. So just wanted to keep everyone updated on that change. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any, oh, yes.
What's the name of the new department? Kelly, one more time, sorry.
It's within the City Planning Department, my division is renamed Climate Preservation and Public Spaces.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Yes.
Sorry. The California Native Plant Society, who was here earlier this year talking about resiliency, habitat resiliency and native plants and how they support native birds and other organisms, but who cares about anything besides birds, has their annual fall sale. So if you're interested in buying native plants, it's in north of the city a little ways, but it is for the county, all kinds of stuff that you can get if you want to put them in your yard or patio. And this is a little bit of self-promotion, but as part of that, we made this booklet about all of the Your City, Your Flower contenders, which we also talked about earlier in the year. And so this booklet is a scavenger hunt to find those native plants anywhere in the county. And if you find them, then you win. And if you don't find them, then you contact your ranger or representative to get more native plants. So in terms of getting more native plants in the county, this is one of the ways that we're trying to build off of the city of San Diego changing their flower to a native. So just FYI, some of the QR codes in here are wrong, but this is what it's going to look like when it's all right. If you want to.
Very
Nice.
On my end, self-promo for SDRCC, the Climate Collaborative has, I think I mentioned this last month, our Climate Leader Awards nomination period is ending next week. So if anybody's interested in nominating somebody, Julia, please do so. We also have our end of the year celebration, our third annual regional climate recap coming up on December 4th. That registration link is live. It's gonna be at the Maritime Museum on their steam ferry. So we'll be on the water, on December 4th at 3:30. So yeah, would love to see everybody there. If you're an SDRCC member, which some of you are, we're also doing a poster session for folks to show off what they've done this year.
What was the date again?
December 4th.
December.
Wonderful. So we'll have the link to the minutes when we put those up.
Yeah.
I do have, not actually a reminder, we had Kari from CERT last time. And she sent around a flyer that there will be CERT programming at a library location near all of you. The link, which I'll provide for minutes later, is mysdpls and publiclibrary.org/CERT events. So that's CERT events. So I'll put that up. So this is a number of scheduled workshops in one location through the end of the fiscal year in June 2026. So a lot of opportunities for people to take those workshops. Any other comments from the board?
I'll just add on that note, that flyer has also been posted to the Resiliency Advisory Board website. So if you want to see the flyer, get the QR code, that is on the board webpage.
All right, so we're moving on to item 5, which is approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the minutes?
I have a comment. I'm gonna hold it until we talk about the draft report.
No, it's not. Get a motion for approving the minutes? Anyone want to make that motion?
I do.
Oh,
I move to approve the minutes from last meeting.
Second,
second motion.
They'll beat you out.
She's pretty quick.
Yes,
In that vote, I'm gonna abstain.
so we just won't add you to the top.
I was also gonna abstain. I can vote in favor if that's helpful, because I don't think I need to, but I was not there.
Well, it's more than half. All right, so all in favor? All opposed? We don't need to ask for abstentions, so that would be 5-0.
So you did
I abstained.
okay.
Item 6, non-agenda comment.
So we have no one here in person. For virtual, you can raise your hand either by tapping the raise your hand button on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, or by dialing *9 on your phone. You'll be taken in the order in which you raise your hand. When the chair indicates it is your turn to speak, click the unmute prompt that will appear on your computer, tablet, or smartphone.
How do I raise my hand?
And I think you were the only one in the queue, so feel free to go first.
Okay. Yes, as the Resiliency Committee encompasses urban greening and adaptations for climate adaptation or for climate impacts and health, I'm bringing great concern about some tree removals. Yesterday, I first saw photos of the stumps of large trees cut down in Belmont Park. That park and those huge shade trees have been a neighborhood and citywide treasure for decades, for cool places to rest or socialize. It is a wide, grassy area that absorbs stormwater, not far from the beach. The nearby parking lots and Belmont Cove area only have tall palms that provide no shade. It's unthinkable that so many shade trees are gone. I will also provide this comment at today's Park and Recreation Board meeting and ask for the reasons for the fences and the tree removals, ask for the city's decision and notification processes, and an accounting of the removals and loss of shade and public recreation. In our city, we have precious limited park areas and so few overall mature trees. It would take decades to replace them. This is another tragedy for us, and I don't even know where to start, but I wanted to bring it up here. Thank you.
And have, which council district was that in?
District 2,
Okay,
it's in 2.
all right. Have you spoken with the council members on this?
No, I haven't. I didn't see the photos till yesterday, and life is pretty busy, so I thought I would at least bring some concern here since, we do this group is a tree protector group, so. Yeah, I mean, I don't, yeah, anyway, maybe you can figure out what follow-up there might be, and I can certainly call the District 2 folks, but I haven't.
Thank you. So you can help out a
Thanks.
bit. Do you have any other public comment?
I do not see any other hands raised.
All right. So move on to item 7, which is unfinished business, which is perfect for Halloween time when you think about it. We do not have any pending, so we'll move on to our regular agenda to item 9A, which is presentation on inclusive public engagement guide with Kevin, Marsha, and Vanessa Tang. Get that set up. And thank you again for coming to present on this. For the presentations today, we'll try to keep it between 10, 12 minutes, so we have time for questions.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kevin with the City Planning Department, and I'm here to present on the Inclusive Public Engagement Guide for the City of San Diego. So our project team includes Anisha Gianchandani, the Program Manager for Public Engagement, myself, Kevin Borja, a Senior Planner, and Vanessa Tang, who's joined me today, an Associate Planner, both focusing on public engagement. So a little bit about our project's background. The guide was an implementation item in the Parks Master Plan and Climate Resilient SD Plan. Climate Resilient SD specifically included a policy to deepen community partnerships to support greater community involvement and resilience action in plan implementation. Since then, we've started public engagement, internal engagement as well, on public engagement best practices, essentially trying to find what people wanted to see captured in the guide. So starting in 2023 and continuing on to this year, we started drafting the guide. And so we're now at the public review stage, and we're anticipating presenting to the City Council Rules Committee this title as an informational item. And so we'll keep everyone posted on that. It's next November, or this coming November. Also, it's important to note that this work is ongoing. We have additional grant funding from SANDAG for public workshops to make people aware about how to get involved and hosting staff trainings in 2026 and beyond. So a little bit of our background for this project. This is our citywide organizational chart showing how the city's people of San Diego, the mayor, city council, and city departments are all related to each other. We wanted to highlight here that the guide's focus is on city departments. Currently, each department does things a little bit differently in regards to engaging the public. So our aim for the guide is to start seeing public engagement happening in more consistent ways across the city. So with that in mind, the purpose of the guide is to increase operational efficiency. Many of the projects that departments are working on today require public engagement, but we really lack a standardized way of doing so. So we're also looking to make better and often more sustainable decisions informed by community needs and desires, and to build trust where trust has diminished with government, and then to look at how to better engage and reach groups that are less represented in public participation so that we can make the best decision possible in service of the entire public. The guide also informs how staff will solicit public input on the different ways that the city seeks to affect change. So for example, public input can influence plans like the Parks Master Plan, regulations like the city's Land Development Code, and programs like Parks After Dark. It's important to see that the city seeks public input in a standardized and thoughtful way to inform programs, policies, regulations. So when we talk about public participation, we're referring to the process through which the public receives information and shares input. Public outreach is a one-way process where the city is informing the public about its projects. And public engagement is a two-way process in which the city shares information and collects input and feedback for decision-making. So our guide covers best practices for both these sides. So then what does the guide include? Our first section is about the guide. This includes information on engagements that we've conducted over the past several years, why inclusive engagement matters, our principles and values of public engagement as well. Next, we have a section on the history and background of public participation within the city, including regulations and histories of how certain groups were excluded from decision-making. Following that, we have a section that identifies who is underrepresented in decision-making so we can better reach and engage them. Next is a section on how to implement public engagement and work with different stakeholders in public use. Our section on engagement techniques and approaches provides over 30 different ways to share information and collect input from the public. We also have a section on clear and inclusive communication because it really starts with the public understanding what we're doing if we want them to get input or want them to provide us input. And then lastly, we specifically have a public-facing section called Get Involved with the City that provides the public tips and resources on how to get engaged with the city and best make their voices heard through volunteer opportunities and how to get informed of ongoing engagement events. So the guide lives online, and this is intentional, so we can update it as needed, but we've heard your feedback and a hard copy PDF version of it is coming. So a little bit about our engagement principles. Knowing about how the public engages broadly influencing city initiatives, the guide is driven by principles that reflect the city's high-level values for public participation. Our first one here is build community relationships. This is about fostering authentic and sustained connections between staff and the public, and cultivating trust and mutual understanding. Communicating clearly is our next one. Communicating information in accessible, understandable, and relatable ways, and using straightforward and plain language as the basis for public engagement so people understand what's at stake. Next, the commitment to the engagement process. So showing steps to conducting effective public participation. And this is accounting for things like thoroughly researching which stakeholders have been impacted, following up after input has been provided, and more. We have inclusion. So this is actively inviting and welcoming participation from all people in all groups and inviting diverse perspectives and backgrounds. And then lastly, we have transparency, clearly articulating goals of engagement, providing regular updates throughout a project cycle, and then sharing how input was considered. This will help San Diegans understand processes and follow outcomes of our decisions. So I'm now going to pass it over to Vanessa, who will get us in the guide in more detail.
Thanks, Kevin. So it's important that good process is followed for planning and conducting public engagement. The guide defines 8 steps for conducting effective public participation. In step 1, staff understand what project resources they have available, such as the staff capacity, time, and money available for a project. During steps 2 and 3, staff are to understand the project area and identify stakeholders. They may do this by reviewing past input received about a topic and conducting early interviews with stakeholders. During steps 4 and 5, staff will determine the level of participation and communicate clearly how the public can provide input. In step 6, staff create and implement a public engagement plan informed by stakeholders, research, and project resources available. Throughout step 6, staff will follow up with participants about how their input was used. Reporting back and following up is emphasized again in step 7. The guide provides recommendations on how staff can report back to participants and show how they were heard, such as through a report back summary. In step 8, staff evaluate the engagement process to continuously improve future engagement processes. The Engaging Diverse Groups section includes information to know before engaging these groups and ways to tailor our strategies to make outreach and engagement more inclusive. On the screen, you can see Engaging Children and Youth, which provides specific recommendations for sharing information and inviting input from youth. Each section has considerations for before engaging, challenges and barriers to participation, and tips for outreach and engagement. The public shared that it's important to work with engagement partners like community-based organizations, community planning groups, neighborhood associations, and businesses. Tips for working with these different groups are included in the guide. For example, on our Working with Community-Based Organizations page, we outline what they are, how staff can create paid partnerships with them, and why it's important to share information with them, and more. The guide includes over 35 different techniques and approaches for outreach and engagement. This includes things such as arts-based engagement, community cafes, public service announcements, and vision walls. There are more traditional techniques such as public meetings or workshops as well. The guide walks staff through how to implement each technique before, during, and after, as well as how much time, money, and staff capacity they may take. The Communicating with the Public section contains guidance to help make staff information clearer to the public. For instance, it provides information on clear, simple, and inclusive language, which is writing and speaking succinctly and using universal phrases that people of all backgrounds can understand. Additionally, it has information on translation and interpretation and how to make documents accessible for people with sight, mobility, and hearing disabilities. It has guidance on public speaking, since staff need to clearly convey information to the public, which in turn helps the public better understand and provide input on city projects. Additionally, there's information on facilitation of engagement events that provides guidance on how to create an inclusive engagement event environment that is welcoming and respectful of all participants. When staff follow the guidance in this section, the city can increase the public's awareness and understanding of city projects. So you can share with others how to participate with the city. The Get Involved with the City section provides an overview of what the city does, the public's role as voters and constituents in shared decision-making, different ways to volunteer or get involved, and specific guidance for how to effectively participate at public hearings. We hope this information helps the public understand how to effectively get involved in city decision making. So the guide is available for public review until October 19th, and we've conducted 3 workshops to receive public input. We would love your feedback and welcome you to provide your feedback online. So with that, I'll walk you through how to provide feedback on our website. So on each individual webpage of our website, there's a blue provide feedback button at the top right-hand corner of each page. And by clicking on that, it pulls up the form for you to provide your name, your email address, your organizational affiliation, if any. You can also optionally rate it how useful you find the content of the page, and then describe any suggestions you have and submit it, and we'll receive it. This is not the only way though. You can also email us at engagement@cdgo.gov. With that, any additional thoughts or questions?
Before we go to that, do we have any public comment? As far as you can tell.
Something. Well,
Let's see, and hand.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. You know, I just put it, I put one of the comments in the chat. It's a wonderful document. I've already been learning from it. I think it's really going to help city folks. But I'm really challenged in jumping in the format online. So I'm just looking for an overall PDF document. Do you have that?
Hey, Ann, thank you for your comment. Yes, so we're working on a Word vote version of the format right now, so we can submit that to our rules committee. And so we'll have that by you before November, or by November, excuse me.
Okay.
And then we'll have a little bit of work on the like nicer formatted PDF version of it coming soon.
Yeah, it just has to do with how humans learn and
For sure.
and thank you very much. Okay, I sent an email, I just didn't hear back from you guys. So thank you very much.
No worries, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's going to make a big difference. I work with the urban forestry staff, and I think that just helping the staff, the younger staff get it because they've been much more trained in community forestry. But I think it's going to be a really good way to have a common vocabulary about what you mean and what the city staff who are likely not as trained in this can actually do that's very practical. So yeah, I really like what's there. And we'll see how it gets implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ann.
Yes, having a document version will let people know when they read the whole thing.
I'll read the whole thing.
We have any questions from the board? Yes.
Could you guys just give an outline of how this affects boards like this one?
Right. So we have a little bit of information about how we interface with the board on our website. There's a section under the engaging diverse groups and then working with our partners section that talks about how we would work with boards, such as this one, in collaboration with engagement projects and any of the projects for our city departments.
I see, but how about being able to help the board in this outreach?
Right. I will have to get back to you on that, but I will definitely look up how to and then follow up.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
I think also this is like a public resource as well, so it's available for the board to use if you wanted to use it for your public engagement
Yeah.
strategies as well.
Sure. Okay, thanks.
Erica?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. First of all, I think this is a wonderful, really great approach, you know, particularly when it's being done in different ways by different departments. Bring that all together with a common framework and vocabulary is a really great idea. I guess one of the things that I'm kind of curious about is someone who's been involved in different kinds of engagement work over the years, particularly very community-based engagement, is that one of the barriers to participation is the fact that so many people either have to work or don't have childcare or don't have transportation, so they need resource support in order to be able to participate in any face-to-face kind of activity.
Sure.
Does this effort have any kind of resources or budgets associated with it in order to allow departments that don't have their own funding to actually engage in community approaches like that?
Right. So you touched upon a couple of things. Our guide does have a section about barriers to participation and how to overcome those barriers. So we've identified at least 5 of them that talk about, you know, things like limited resources, structural exclusion, language barriers that people
So
may
you
have.
identify the barriers.
Yeah, so we've identified those barriers and then have a way that the city can seek to address those barriers. And then for each of the different engagement techniques, we do have resource allocations, but estimated resources that it would take to hold an engagement, for example. So we have estimates on like how many staff it would take to run a engagement event, how long it would take to plan for it, how much money it would cost for a department to run it. So there is information about each of those techniques in there, but we don't have any like resource allocation at this time to.
There's no funding associated with the guide. The guide's really a resource that identifies ways that you can, what the barriers are, and then, how to address some of those barriers to make sure.
So in a
it is
department that
inclusive.
doesn't have its own resources to do that kind of aggressive engagement, to actually reach out and get, sort of bottom up feedback, there really isn't any safety net to enable them to do that. That's what I'm hearing.
No, there's not, like the guide itself doesn't come with allocated funding, but for example, if another department were to be going after a grant for one of their initiatives and they're doing engagement as part of that, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they could look at the guide and say,
This
here's
is
what we
what-
would need to
Yes.
scope in for that engagement so that they can get the right amount of funding to support really inclusive
Great.
engagement.
Thank you.
Do you have a second question?
I forgot what the second one was. Okay.
We can get in contact with them after. Yes, Andrew.
Kind of a question building off of that. This looks fantastic and I can see how a board like ours could use it. Makes sense or I like the idea of building a grant so that you include the resources needed to surpass some of these barriers. Can you go to slide 9? That about the process that you've sorry, that, I'm not sure if it's slide 9, that one at least. Can you explain again, sorry if I missed it, who at the city and how the city will follow this? This is in the guide. It's out there as a good process to follow. Is the city going to do this in all levels or in all of their meetings, or like what exactly is this piece of the process for the city of San Diego?
I take that. So I think what's more applicable maybe would be like the organizational chart. So the framework that we set forth in like the steps, so steps 1 through 8 are really for our city departments. So our departments down here, to use as like a framework for what they're going to do. It's highly recommended that they follow these steps, and involve stakeholders through, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's essentially the city staff would go through all the different steps together, but at different stages, we incorporate stakeholders or other like key agencies that we might want to partner with and engagement partners as well, throughout the process. And it's outlined in each of the different steps that who is involved in what.
And so we're also working with HR currently to do staff training for this starting in 2026. So we're identifying the kind of business or the they're called business lines at my last job, sorry. Identifying the staff levels that will need to do this kind of training. So maybe the people who are more public facing will be required to take this training in the future. But we're also identifying those folks who have maybe more customer service oriented jobs to also take this as part of their training.
Another question. I've benefited from lots of city led facilitation and public events. They're great. But the ones that I'm at usually are required as a part of CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. So how does this, what the city should follow, this resource that for city staff relate to what it has to follow, or how it has to follow for CEQA at least, or other kinds of things like that? Are they tied in here with little asterisks?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So in step 6, and then or anything before step 6, so 1 through 6, we talk about the required processes that some city staff have to take as a part of their projects that are like part of like regulation, so CEQA, for example. And then everything else is kind of like on top of that, like what other ways are there to engage the public while also doing those that are required of the departments. Yeah.
Thanks.
Couple questions for Ryan. First of all, how will you be tracking metrics over time?
Yeah, so we have a evaluate the engagement process section of the public engagement steps, where we're looking at different metrics for success. So we define those as different things like participant experience, thinking about how our reach is growing through this process. So we do have a page on that and how we're tracking those metrics. Yeah, happy to send that as well.
Yes, because I saw you have the demographic representation. You can check those against the project area,
Yeah.
but for things like participant experience? Will you be taking a baseline over the first X months and then seeing how that improves over time?
Yeah, so we have a couple of ways that we could do that. We have participant experience surveys that we would send out during online engagement events or even in-person engagement events that we would take that feedback to understand like where we are baseline, and then also growing upon that, looking at what changes we need to be making to make the participant experience more enjoyable, more engaging.
Could be a report, like an annual report on how things are going.
We haven't determined that just yet, but that is a good question and I will take that back.
Okay. I have one more question, but first of all, sorry, Erica, you had one more.
And just the question is, am I correct in understanding this is discretionary on a department to use and to go through it and figure out what they want to do, what's appropriate, what their stakeholder outreach is going to be? You're not, there isn't a step in the process that says, if for reaching stakeholders, be sure to include.
That's right. Yeah.
So they can pick and choose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? I had one more question, which is what about individual? I'm thinking about staff that work, have that touch point one-on-one, whether it's someone from talk about water issues, public utility issues, assisting a resident with a problem they call in on. I know you have to get it done, but I'm thinking where there's more back and forth. Will you be collecting data from that, those types of interactions?
So we haven't identified that yet, as like an individual interaction as something that we're really gathering. Is that the question?
Yes.
So we are working with our performance and analytics department who have the customer experience. They have a report on customer experience. So that is something that we're considering incorporating into our training. Yeah.
That's where Erica made a good point that there are a lot of barriers to people engaging with the city, but there are quite a few folks who have at least one contact with the city every year just on assistance with something. Like there's a problem with this with the sewer project that caused me a big issue. Ask me how I know. And just those opportunities to leave a good impression or to collect information from the residents.
Yeah. That's helpful. Thank you.
So you have your contact information on there, and is there any other information you think would be helpful just for the public to know?
No, this is it. We are doing public review until the 19th, which is the Sunday. So we've been open since September, and we're hoping to incorporate all the really good comments that we've been getting from the public and all of our workshops, and presenting to the Rules Committee, City Council Rules Committee in November.
Wonderful.
We also have a recording as well of our presentation, so that anyone who wasn't able to make it today, or if you wanted to share with your individual groups, we do have it on the homepage of our website. It's a link to our YouTube video.
Wonderful. That's very helpful. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. So we now have item 9B, which is Dr. Lorenzo Christoph. Erica will be providing an introduction. He talks about grid resilience.
Great. Let's make sure he's here. And so there were really two things. Yes, there is. Great. I just wanted to say in introduction, as a group, we've been talking a great deal about resilience and what it means in different contexts. This is really on electric service resilience. And as a piece of that, I just wanted to highlight that there are a couple of ways to, Lorenzo is going to talk in greater detail about definitions and all of that, but there is already a project underway in the city to build microgrids. The city has contracted for a series of 8 microgrids that are currently under construction. 3 of those are on what we would think of as resilience centers. That is to say, they are being constructed on an existing recreation center, which is a place where the community can gather in the case of an emergency. The other 5 are on police and fire stations. And of these 8, 4 of them are essentially done already. 2 of the resilience centers and 2 of the fire stations are done. So with that then as a start to thinking about resilience and how it can be provided, electric system resilience provided in a reasonably quick and timely manner, I invited Lorenzo to join us. He is a nationally known expert in the design of electricity markets and consult broadly on the changes in the electricity system that will be needed, that are needed to deliver both higher levels of renewables and local distributed generation in such a way that it also provides the opportunity for local ownership and increased participation by community members. That's the justice angle that he'll talk more about, that I think is pretty important to our work. Lorenzo has a deep background in all of these things. Before becoming an independent consultant in 2017, he worked at the California Independent System Operator for 18 years. And before that, worked at the California Energy Commission, has a master's in statistics and a PhD in economics from the UC Davis, and he is reaching us now from Davis. Lorenzo, are you there?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I am. So
Great.
good to see
Thank
you
you.
all.
Take it away.
Thanks. Okay, so I will share my screen so you can all see this presentation. So bear with me just a moment. Here is my, okay, and I will put this in. So hopefully you're all seeing a presentation now, yes?
Looks good. Yes.
Okay, great. So resilience, energy resilience and local energy systems. This is the kind of thing I've been working on really for about a dozen years since even while I was still at the ISO, because I saw the growth of distributed resources and their potential. And looking at the power system as a whole thing, top to bottom, I realized this is going to make a lot of changes in how we do everything. So I thought I would start with some basic definitions to tie to things that you've already been talking about. I just caught the tail end of your prior conversation. So I have an idea of some things that you're working on, and also Erica has filled me in. But starting with resiliency concepts, the way I think about resilience in general, it's the ability of a system to continue to provide its intended functions and services when a system disruption occurs. And that can mean providing uninterrupted service with minimal reduction in service quality. In other words, it just keeps going even though there's a disruption happening. Or two, minimize the duration and the population impacted if there is an interruption. You restore it quickly and hopefully you limit its extent. So with that as a general concept, well, what does resilience for a community mean? And that means that there are a lot of functions that you want to be able to be providing even though this disruption occurs. In the immediate moment, water supply, food supply, medical care, shelter, wastewater, and you can think of other kinds of emergency services. But in the long term, economic stability, public health, housing, security, and it's very common that these short-term disruptions that may last anything from a few hours to days, or in some cases weeks, have ongoing impacts that affect the local economy, the housing stock, and so on. Consider a town like Paradise, which had so much destruction that many of the people there are still in the process of recovering. Now, when we start thinking about these essential services, well, a lot of them depend on energy. Just about everything we do needs energy, but in particular, the things that we think about in emergency situations, mobility, communications, space heating or cooling if there's an extreme temperature, food preservation, lighting, and again, you can probably add more to that. So I get to this notion basically that energy resilience requires local energy resources. And what that means is that a lot of people in the electricity industry talk about energy resilience in terms of hardening the grid, making the grid more resilient to these emergency types of disruptions. But my notion is that hardening the grid is not enough. No matter how many billions of dollars we invest in the grid, there will be outages. We can't foresee every circumstance. And, things are happening in surprising ways that we didn't anticipate. Who would have thought that Western North Carolina in the mountains was going to get a hurricane? But sure enough, it did, and it wiped out Asheville. So we need to invest in local systems that can island from the grid. That's kind of the technical term, that electrically it can operate as an island when there's an emergency situation happening. So to back up now, more generally, today's challenges require local energy solutions. And I think these are things you're already familiar with, but you think about the big things that we're concerned about today: sustainability, decarbonization. Energy systems are a major contributor to all of the adverse environmental impacts that we are aware of, whether it's carbon emissions, other types of emissions and pollution, and or even extraction of fuels. A major contributor to the issues. A lot of emissions result from human energy use, which are shaped by local arrangements and structured. So the things that city planners deal with, zoning, land use, housing, building codes, mobility services, these are all interrelated with energy and have an impact on the conditions that we're trying to mitigate. Resilience, maintaining essential service when the grid fails. We talked about that. We'll come back to it. And energy justice. And one of the ways of thinking about energy justice is to democratize energy asset ownership and operation. So when we think about distributed energy resources, you can think about the assets themselves, the resources being decentralized, but along with that, we can also decentralize the ownership. And to me, that's a really crucial element when it comes to energy justice, disadvantaged communities, government budgets, et cetera, that owning the physical assets that provide an essential service can actually be a component of economic health and well-being. And I like to think of energy as a social determinant of health. I underline that because it's kind of a buzzword from the social sciences that I've adopted. Because energy is so often conceived as a commodity. There's producers of this commodity, and you buy the commodity and you consume it in kilowatt hours. But I think a better way of thinking about energy, because it's so intrinsic to everything that a community or a household or a business needs as a social determinant. And so I think about the future in terms of local energy supply businesses that can build local wealth and economic resilience and mitigate historic harms, strengthen vulnerable neighborhoods. And the local ownership could be the city government, or it could be a nonprofit. It could be a group of churches that forms a consortium, community-based organizations. It could be a tribe. It could be a city agency like the Water Authority, for example. So, but right now we have a 20th century electric system structure, and by structure I mean the incumbent institutions as well as the regulatory and statutory frameworks that are not very conducive to local energy. And in fact, Governor Newsom vetoed several bills just over the last week or so that would have advanced local energy. And so there are some barriers inherent in the structure, not just in California, but in other states as well. Local energy is cost effective and competes with the grid. I think these are the trends we're seeing. We're somewhere in the middle right now. I'm not going to try to make this a quantitatively accurate graph, but the general trends we're seeing is that DERs and microgrids are improving in performance per cost, versatility, resilience, while grid power keeps getting more expensive. And the fact that electric service can be locally owned and operated, what that means is that as the state responds or the Public Utilities Commission responds with policies or regulations that suppress DER adoption, and sorry for introducing the buzzword DER, you're probably familiar with that, but I mean basically the big umbrella of all kinds of distributed energy resources, including energy efficiency. But the problem is that the more the regulations try to suppress DER adoptions, we're increasing the incentives for grid defection. That is for customers who have the financial resources, whether it's wealthy homeowners or gated communities or businesses that are very energy intensive, to just simply say, you know what, I'm better off supplying on-site energy resources and using those and being independent, ensuring my service quality. But the problem is that grid defection as a step toward the future is going to worsen energy inequities because it'll be affluent customers and businesses that'll be able to do it, whereas low-income communities, renters especially, will be left out. So what we need really is an electric distribution network and local markets that can unlock the full value of these resources and compensate non-utility investment. In other words, the local investments that can be done by cities and nonprofits and co-ops and so on, where the resources are not becoming part of the utility rate base, but they're being invested because we have a framework that allows them to earn revenues through local transactions, through supplying energy to their neighbors. Some possibilities of what this looks like: compensate customers to oversized rooftop solar and battery systems and provide energy to their neighborhoods. Generally, the rules say that the size of your system needs to be fitted to the needs of your building, your house or your business or whatever. Well, that's forced inefficiency because a lot of houses have shady rooftops. We ought to be planning energy not for an individual household or building, but plan it for the neighborhood so that we maximize solar where we have good solar exposure, maybe on shared facilities, and then we share that energy around the neighborhood. That's like a community solar model, which the CPUC just basically voted down last year. I'll come back to that a little bit. Enable locally owned co-ops and nonprofits to supply energy and electric vehicle charging as components of the local economy. Again, it's integrating energy supply in different modes into the local economy where the revenues remain local and build local wealth. Deploy municipal electrification projects. Well, a lot of cities are interested in public mobility fleets, school buses. Well, if we're going to electrify school buses, let's not just charge them from the grid. Let's build local resources so we're actually charging those school buses from a local supply resource. Retrofit neighborhood resilience centers. Erica already talked about that, but to provide emergency care when needed. Build local energy planning capability to integrate local power production with tree canopy, land use, public space, stormwater capture at a neighborhood level. So what I'm thinking here is that the city planners and the county planners who have traditionally left energy planning to the utility need to think about a kind of local first energy supply planning paradigm where the planners who are thinking about development over the next 10 to 15 years or whatever your planning horizon is thinking about how much can we supply our energy needs locally, and then creating multi-customer or community microgrids that can operate 24 by 365 and provide uninterrupted service. Some of you may have been aware that the Public Utilities Commission has had now an ongoing process on microgrids for about 7 years. It started in 2019, 6 years or so. And basically the idea of creating a multi-customer microgrid is to enable an entire neighborhood to have shared resources that serve the loads in that neighborhood. For example, a new housing development where 2,000 homes may be powered by local resources. But it's not really legal to do that under the CPUC's rules. A muni can do it, but not too many of the existing munis have showed great interest in it. But that's certainly a part of the vision of the future. An example is Oakland Eco Block Project, which started many years ago, a joint effort of UC Berkeley and Lawrence Berkeley Lab and several other nonprofits and other organizations, basically to create a DC microgrid that serves an urban residential block surrounded by streets on 4 sides, but treated all as a microgrid. They started doing that as a DC model. They got a bunch of funding from the Energy Commission to implement, but then they ran into barriers with existing laws and regulations that really undermined the effectiveness of what they were trying to do. You can search for that online and find a lot more info about it. So one of the ways that I think about the future is bottom-up planning to optimize distribution connected supply, starting from local needs and priorities, plan supply using a local first principle, develop shared resources, design assets to maximize production, and then maximize rooftop solar and storage systems on the built environment. And I really emphasize this because I'm following the CPUC's IRP process this year, integrated resource planning. A couple of years ago, I was following the workshops that the CEC was conducting for the SB 100 initiative, which says California's got to get to 100% carbon-free electricity by 2045. And so there's a workshop process going on that does reports every 5 years or so to the legislature on pathways to achieve the 2045 objective. All of these planning processes are ignoring distribution-connected resources that could be deployed on the built environment. That is the roofs of warehouses, shopping malls, schools, parking lots. There's some movement in irrigation canals now in Turlock. They've got a project that's actually up and running. But for the most part, the planning processes don't look at this as a resource type. 2016 NREL study on rooftop potential showed that California could meet 74% of annual electric consumption from rooftop solar. The average for the US was 39%. And I keep bringing this up in the planning processes because, you know, you got to repeat things a gazillion times for them to catch on. But by building on the built environment, there's no land use conflicts. They're in areas where there is load that would consume the electricity, so you don't need transmission, and you can support a community microgrid. So then the bulk transmission system, what the ISO operates, the wholesale markets, we still need those, but we're going to use them for residual demand after we meet as much as possible from local. That's the idea of bottom up. So how do we get there? Well, we need to enable these multi-property or community microgrids to operate 365 days a year, 24 hours a day as a single controllable entity. I underline that phrase because that's part of the DOE definition, and it also appears in the California legislation as the definition of a microgrid. That is a group of resources and loads or customers that can operate as a single controllable entity. The way the CPUC rules worked out through this proceeding, and a tariff that was originally proposed by PG&E but has been adopted by the other IOUs under the CPUC. A microgrid can only operate during grid outages. It can island only at IOU discretion, and only the IOU can operate it. So that essentially eliminates the commercial viability of 365 by 24 operation. The assumption underlying the CPUC rules is that these community microgrids have no value except as power backup for internal customers, when in fact they could provide great value not only to the customers but also to the grid, because you now have a system that can be self-reliant and can remove demands on the grid, can respond to grid emergencies, and so on. So the result is these community microgrids are only viable with large grants or public or ratepayer funding. And in fact,
Dr. Christoph, we have
Yes.
just about a minute left.
Excuse me?
We just have about a minute or two left.
Okay. Well, I'm going to rush through these last couple of things here. So again, some policy things. I've touched on this already. A reform of the distribution utility. You'll get these notes so you can look at that. Some final steps then. Invest in lots of local projects. I think that's really a place to where you can focus efforts in the near term. Take a look at this website on Together New Orleans. They've done a lot of stuff through consortiums of local nonprofits, churches, and other community-based organizations. Community engagement, I heard you were having a thorough discussion of that when I logged onto this call. So through the state agencies, as well as the city departments, work with county planners to develop local energy resources, develop business and financing models, and basically build a statewide movement. You know, these issues are issues for the entire state and other states as well. And I think a way to get leverage over the legislature, to get more legislation to remove the barriers, and to get the legislators and the next governor, we'll have a new one in a little over a year, to be sensitive to the needs of communities for local energy. But I think having a statewide movement towards that end is really what can make a difference to what happens in state regulation and state law. So that's the end. I will stop there, and thanks for listening.
Do you have any, Erica, do you want to? Comments to add to that?
There were a couple of questions, that one of which came up last month at this meeting, when a board member asked, is there any difference in the response the maintaining and restoring electric service based on the nature of the kind of disaster it is. So, for example, if we were in an area that rather than having wildfire dangers, the prevailing type of disaster was flooding or earthquakes, would the kind of bottom-up system change?
Oh, absolutely. I think bottom-up planning does involve assessing the kinds of risks that you expect to be vulnerable to. Something that is small and self-contained, like a community resilience center, has a much higher probability of being able to continue functioning because it's an isolated entity. Whereas a multi-customer microgrid that requires the utility wires is going to be at greater risk. But any resilience planning needs to start with the kinds of risks you expect to be vulnerable to, as well as identifying the kinds of essential services that are your highest priority for maintaining their service.
I don't see any hands raised, but we'll just double check that there are no public comments. Any other board comments?
I think Jamie, you have one first. Okay, Stan?
Okay, you sure?
I don't even think I had my hand up.
That was a very informative presentation. Appreciate all that information. I wanted to share an experience I think that fits in with this very well. Our local homeowners association for over a year now has been trying to develop a solar project and has done pretty well working with the IOU, getting grandfathered into like an M2 rate, which gives a really good return on investment on that kind of local system. And what we've run into is that from a policy perspective, a lot of resistance at the permitting level at the city. And we even tried to show how the project related to the resiliency policies of the city. That didn't move any needles on the permitting front. And one of the basic dilemmas we've had is that other than the homes in the homeowner association, all the land we use for common services like a swimming pool, tennis courts, basketball, etc., all are in open space easements. And while you can put in a basketball court, there's not any support for putting in a structure like a solar project. So we're just about running out of time on the project. We've tried various sites, making some really dumb mistakes, like trying to go into a multi-species protected area, and that of course wouldn't fly. Anyway, my point is, I think that and this is not grid defection. I mean, we didn't think about we got to get off the grid because we're a wealthy community or anything. It was just an idea that this would be a way to lower cost to the homeowners and also provide some flexibility during emergencies, since we're in a high risk fire zone. So I just want to comment on it. I think a lot of the issues that this board may face in this area is that it is just a wholly different approach than we've done in the past, I think. And giving priority to this approach, I think will be something that'll take a lot of effort. And maybe this board can help.
Yeah, that's a very good illustration. It would be good to think about built structures that exist already as places to deploy solar, like if there is a community center building that's a shared facility, could become a community resilience center, putting solar panels on the roof and battery storage, or parking lots are other possibilities where you're not conflicting with other land use interests. The problem is that if the distribution network is still owned by the investor-owned utility, then the idea of creating shared solar that can be delivered to the customers in the community is still not really a possibility. You still end up with resources that have to sell their power either to the CCA or the utility and participate in the ISO market and the customers that receive that energy are still paying transmission charges. So the way that I and some of my colleagues have been looking at as a way around that is not necessarily for existing subdivisions, but if a new subdivision is being built on a greenfield site where there is no utility infrastructure, it could be possible for the city to create a special purpose muni that would just serve new subdivisions. So it's not trying to take over existing IOU assets, but it's going to partner with the developer and build an electrical system that then the city becomes the owner operator of, in which case, under city governance, you can build shared resources and share them among all of the residents. And that's where great economic benefits can accrue.
Do we have any other questions or comments from the board? Yes.
Just a brief comment. I think this is a very interesting topic. I think it's a very complex topic. I think it really kind of puts together sort of the potential players and conflicts and pros and cons and debate about resiliency, the investor-owned utilities, which have their perspectives, and the things that would need to change to really change the fundamental model, which is electricity as a commodity, and we're the consumers that are paying for it and paying entities to then really preserve the status quo. And so I think it's an interesting concept and something that's potentially worth looking into further.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Director Christoph. We appreciate it. Oh, sorry, Erica.
I just noticed, Lorenzo had added an additional slide at the end. I will get copies of that and share it with everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll share the revised version, because it does have one more slide that you don't have on the original. I'll send that to Erica and she can share with all of you.
Thank you so much, Lorenzo. Really appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank
Bye.
you. And thank you for arranging that, Erica.
Pleasure.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
We have item 9C, which is a resilience topic from Mina Westford, Director of Water from the State of County Water Authority. Thank you so much for your patience. So we're looking about, can you do about 10, 12 minutes?
If you need 20, I think that.
Yeah.
We always have a few discussion items, so let's.
I can do it from back there if you want.
Got you.
I just have to share the screen. What is like? Sharing that. Do you want to push it? I'll give you the chair. Yeah. Let you move it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see how much similarities we have with electricity versus water, which I'm going to be talking about today. Part of our costs in water is electricity, right? To transfer it, to heat it, to move it, to treat it. It's all very electric. I think though, I would disagree on one thing is that you could live without electricity, but you can't live without water. So that would, I mean, electricity makes us more comfortable, stuff our water, food, but you could technically live without it. But it is an interesting concept. I've always thought of electricity as a commodity and not water, right? And so I'm going to talk about how we're shifting the way we think about water a little bit as an investment. So, you know, every generation inherits two things: the world as it is, and the responsibility to make it a better place as we move forward. And that's kind of how I framed our presentation today. I work for the San Diego County Water Authority now. I used to work there about 15 years ago. Prior to that, I spent about 20 years with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, and then went to the Water Authority for about 4.5 years. Left there, went to Metropolitan Water District. I've been back at the Water Authority now for about 1.5 years. And
We've changed, since I've been back, we, went from 24-member agencies to 22-member agencies. We've been supplying water to this vibrant region for over 8 decades. We have a shared purpose amongst our 22-member agencies, and that is, securing a reliable water, system for our 3.3 million residents here in San Diego. So it's no secret that if we didn't have imported water supplies, we would probably be a very small community here because we cannot live on the local rainfall. We don't have snow in our service area, and we're not lucky enough to have any major groundwater basins to be reliant upon. So about 80% of our water comes from places hundreds of miles away through pipes, aqueducts, sometimes pieces of river that gets delivered into our service area. And all of that is transported, some by gravity flow, but a lot of it, like coming from the northern part of California, it gets pumped over major mountains to get here. And also on the Colorado River Basin, there's 5 pumping stations, 5 of the largest in the world, that bring it over here to our region. But the future of our supplies are changing. The climate patterns are shifting, snowpack is shrinking, and our systems that we have been relying upon over the last couple of decades, it's changing, and we see that. We're getting less snowpack, we're getting earlier rainfall, we're getting flashier events that are coming down the system. So we definitely are looking at climate change throughout the Southwest, not just Southern California, but throughout the Southwest. That's really starting to make us think about how we're using water, think about what we're doing with water, how we store it, how we transport it, all of those things, the intensity of when we get flooding and that kind of the issues that we're dealing. It poses extreme challenges because like the gentleman before me, we built our systems in the 20th century and now we're dealing with 21st century problems. This is a picture of Lake Mead. Lake Mead was once a symbol of abundance for the lower basin, and lower basin, it delivers water to Southern Nevada, delivers water to Arizona, California, Southern California, as well as the country of Mexico. So since the year 2000, this reservoir has dropped about 180 feet. And we've done a lot of different programs, the 3 states, the country of Mexico, tribes, to try to help the federal government, to try to help enhance this reservoir. And this reservoir also produces a lot of hydropower. So when the water gets to a certain level, we're not able to push water through the penstocks and produce the electricity that it does, which is really pretty inexpensive compared to like SDG&E or SoCalGas or PG&E. So often we talk about, is it real? I come from a country in Thailand. I grew up without a system of plumbing. If you go back to my home right now, it still doesn't have a system of plumbing. But I show this slide because this is actually real time today. Some of it's in the United States. And in California alone, we have about 1 million residents in the Central Valley that don't have access to clean drinking water, even today in the 21st century. So I like to show this to show that, day 0 is pretty real and in different parts of our world today, including the United States. So some of the things that the Water Authority has done and the cornerstone of our resilience for climate is we built the Carlsbad desalination plant. It's a 56,000 acre feet, 56 MGD a day, acre feet per year. The largest desal water facility in North America. Stan, I know you know a lot about it. We were on the taxpayers together talking about this plant a while back. And we also, back in 2003, we developed the nation's largest agricultural to urban water transfer, where we actually pay farmers in the Imperial Valley to reduce their use and conserve water. And then we transport it through Metropolitan Water District's Colorado River Aqueduct into Southern California. We also lined the All-American Canal, and so the seepage that used to come in, go through the the earthen canals, we have lined them so that we collect that water and bring it into our area. So in terms of our being ready for it, we have a pretty strong, resilient water system here in San Diego County. That was shown in the last few drought periods that we had in California. I didn't put the last one in here, but just a couple years ago, we had areas in Los Angeles that didn't have access to water. And that was mainly because of a transportation system and how you get water through a area like LA that couldn't get water from the State Water Project or the Colorado River. So they were State Water Project dependent in one area of Los Angeles. And so again, San Diego didn't really feel it. You didn't hear it in the news down here, but everywhere else was in really pretty extreme drought restrictions during that time. So those strategic investments, $3 billion, it didn't come cheap. We started 3 decades ago. All of the things that we did, desal, pump storage, pipeline relining, really investing in our infrastructure that we've built since the 1940s, raising San Vicente Dam, all of those things was quite a significant investment that we've been doing over the last 2 decades. But we're at a point now where we've gotten some flashier rain. We have a lot of pure water projects coming around in the county. We're seeing more stormwater projects. The state of California has done some pretty aggressive water restrictions and new laws that have really dampened our growth projections and dampened water use. You know, there's people aren't putting in, they're not buying homes anymore that are putting in large landscapes anymore. So the water use also has changed a lot. So we have a lot of water and our demands are really hardening and coming down. And then we're building in new infrastructure like a Pure Water San Diego project, or Padre Dam has another project. So we're not seeing as much water use that we were building these projects for a few decades ago. And this new era where while we're very resilient, it's very costly. New water supplies are very costly. When we built the Carlsbad desal plant, it was $1 billion. If you were to build it today, it'd probably be 5 billion or more. Metropolitan Water District is looking at a new water recycling program, 150 million gallons per day. They're estimating their cost to be $5,200 an acre foot. So new water is very, very expensive. So we're looking at opportunities to protect the water supplies that we have today, and then make sure that they stretch further, which is something that Pure Water San Diego does, so that we're adaptive, but we understand that the cost of the water is also pretty significant in this time of inflation and other things that our communities are dealing with. So what I get to work on is pretty fun, is taking a look at how do we take the excess water that we have and move it to the areas that have water scarcity. One of the first things that my board did was we settled a long-term litigation that we had with Metropolitan. That was a 15-year dispute on the pricing of how they were moving water through the Colorado River Aqueduct to us. We were able to do that. It stabilized our rates significantly, but it also allowed us to have some opportunities to do water transfers that Metropolitan had never done before, something we had hoped that we could do. And we're here today, actually negotiating, talking to, developing a new program that will allow for us to move water to places like in Los Angeles where they didn't have water, make it available to them. One of the more exciting things that I get to work on is moving water perhaps to places like Arizona. Arizona doesn't have a state water project in Northern California to get water from. They don't have a Carlsbad. They're not located near the ocean like we are. So they're very landlocked and they are very dependent on the Colorado River only and some tributaries that go into the Colorado River. So The 2007 interim guidelines are the operating guidelines that the federal government uses for the system from the upper basin to lower basin to move water through from Colorado River Rockies all the way through till it gets down to Lake Mead. Those guidelines are going to expire in 2026, and you may have seen that in the news. The post 2026 guidelines is what it's called, and there's a huge I don't want to say fight. We're not fighting yet, and we're negotiating who's going to get how much water that comes off of the Rocky Mountains. And so during that negotiations, we're inserting a framework that will allow us to move water perhaps from San Diego to cities like Phoenix and Tucson or Southern Nevada. It's never been done before. The guidelines were developed in 1922. They're very flexible. We've been able to add on to them over the years. We've had different, administrative records and a couple lawsuits in there, but we've been able to really work within the framework of the law of the river. But the post 2026 guidelines, as we're coming up, we're trying to negotiate with the upper basin states. It's not looking well. What may happen is the administration may come in and just dictate to all 7 states that rely on that who gets how much water. And if that happens, for sure, we'll be in a long-term litigation amongst the various states. It also includes 30 tribes, the country of Mexico, who gets 1.5 million acre feet off of the Colorado River. But for us, it really does identify a new term, a new opportunity for us to develop supplies here and move it using the basin into other areas. And so I would say that it's an opportunity for us. It's not pipelines and aqueducts of the 20th century. This is next gen solutions, and it's really about partnerships, opportunities, and really thinking kind of outside of the box. This is how we would do that is not, obviously build a pipeline to Arizona. What we would do is we would leave our Colorado River supplies in Lake Mead and let Arizona take that out of Lake Mead. So it really becomes like an accounting, if you will, where, the reclamation will decide like who gets what water, and they do that now. They've just never done it in this kind of way. So we have a rich history of implementing, interstate water transfers. We've just never done it interbasin. So, and that ends my presentation. I hope I made your timeline, but it's, basically for resilience and affordability and climate change in the next steps, I think we really have to do things a little differently than we've done in the past. And I'm happy to answer any question. I know I went through it really fast, but happy to answer any questions. And Jamie, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah,
I
no,
really
thank you
appreciate
for
it.
coming. And
Yes.
Mina was originally scheduled for, I think it was July or June when yeah.
Wow.
So we canceled that meeting. So thank you for bearing with us. And thank you for highlighting kind of like the intricacies of our water system, which, as you started with, is just so absolutely mandatory for our life. And just like how the legal and policy sides of things and the finance and economics and the technical all need to like work together. And that there's so many old systems set in place that are just, since it's like such a heavy physical resource versus electricity, which is like going through wires, it's just such a different, harder problem to solve, or everything's hard, but I just can see that it's like,
Different.
how do you move water? I mean, that's so, it's amazing. If any of you haven't read the book, what's that one? Oh, I know, well, it's an old
Cadillac
book.
Desert?
Yeah,
Desert.
Cadillac Desert, about how our water system was, it's incredible. Like, if you think about all those aqueducts that were built way back when, yeah. Pretty cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Do we have any public comment on it?
Yeah,
I don't see any hands raised, so I think we are good to go to work with the
Eric,
questions.
did you raise your hand?
I did.
yeah.
So brief question and then one kind of comment. So on the slide that you had comparing costs, you had stormwater costs on there saying that 100,000 an acre. Yeah. And is that like building infrastructure to capture stormwater and put it into the system?
I believe so. That was a slide. It wasn't my slide. So I don't have the background. This came out of Metropolitan's Pure Water slide, so I can get you the background details of that. But I do think building stormwater is probably one of the most expensive ones, because you have to have the catch basins, you have to treat it before it goes in, you have to have the infiltration. And most of the stormwater capture is already on top of urban areas, so you're pulling up streets again, right? And you're trying to build it on that. I think, we can always look, do Monday night quarterbacks and go like, if you were to build a city today, we'd have bioswales and more natural areas to capture water and things like that. But we paved over everything.
Yeah.
So pulling that up and then redoing it. And, one of the things I probably didn't stress enough is just the regulatory issues that impact the costs, either whether it's prolonging it, going through a CEQA or NEPA process, or city ordinances, as you will probably are aware, and just really add on to those costs. We saw that with our desal, we built the desal plant, then we had an ocean plan amendment, we had to go back in, figure out what fish screens and pipe protection were. It's $100 million. Right, we're all paying for that. So it's, and then if you ever get an opportunity to go out there, the fish screens are so tiny, right? I don't think we'll ever can go through that. I'm not a biologist, but it's like, we have to ask ourselves at what point and what are we protecting for, right? So.
Yeah, I guess my comment on that is just, there might be some co-benefits if there's infrastructure and projects to sort of capture the stormwater. Can it help reduce flooding somewhere else for that? So that is kind of an alarming cost, but I mean, it's every time it rains and there's flooding and everything flows into the ocean, it just seems like a waste of a potential resource that's out there, is my comment. I think my other comment, and it's sort of an interesting policy question, is if we're transferring some of our share to Arizona, I mean, it's further up the river in portions of it, but I mean, people move to Arizona because it's cheaper, but it's also something like 90 or 100 days in a row of over 100 degrees weather, and that just keeps changing. So if people are moving to an area that itself is taking more power to cool down and everything, I mean, is that really the best use of all of our resources? So I get that if we're having oversupply, we can sell it and probably help subsidize our costs, but someone's still paying, and there's still an environmental impact of our prices of housing versus Arizona prices of housing. So
we're subsidizing their continued growth and Arizona growth and consumption there.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's good to see you again. When I got on this board and we looked at various issues, flood, fire, electricity, the one area I felt like we didn't have to spend a lot of time on was water supply and resilience. Because it's, in my mind, this region has probably done more in that area than any part of the state. And so I've always been proud of all the efforts done in this region relative to water supply. It's a tough issue, but there was a lot of effort put in this area to provide for a future economy that would be successful. So what we're seeing now, and of course it's coming somewhat from the city council, is, well, wait a minute, this resilience costs a lot of money and it has a rate impact. So it's not only a physical resilience question, it's a fiscal question. Can we afford it? And even beyond that, it's an equity issue, because does it affect certain parts of the community more than others? And if so, how do we balance that issue? So I've come away both from the presentation we had earlier and from this one thinking there's some similarities I just want to put out there. Maybe we can talk about some other time. But I do think maybe that's one thing we could help with as a board, is to try to approach resiliency from not just what element are we looking at, what physical structure element are we looking at, but to balance that with physical impacts and with equity outcomes, so that we're measuring things that we're proposing or hoping the city does, not with a single lens of this just makes a lot of sense because it makes them much more resilient. But also it makes us more resilient. And we've balanced that with alternatives that have different cost and equity impact. So it's just a thought that came to me listening, and I want to throw it out there so I don't forget it. And maybe sometime we can have a discussion about how that might fit into future work that the board looks at.
I added that for guidelines for future, our next annual report or any future reports, looking at those three lenses
Oh,
together. So
yeah.
thank you.
San Diego County Water Authority, you know, we're not in a building, we're not building new infrastructure for growth. We think our growth is flattened out. Unfortunately, they're moving to Arizona, right? I think, but affordability is really tough. The way our rates, the way Prop 16 and Prop 218 are really hand tie us. So, you know, we're unlike the electricity, of field utility, we can't give a discount for folks for disadvantaged communities for water, you know, I think I think it comes down to financing structure. You have these major fixed costs. We sell it on volumetric, and so when we do all the right things, conservation, you know, hold down our use, our per capita per day per person, but our rates still climb because you still have that basic backbone of the infrastructure that you have to pay for. You have to reinvest in. Some of these things are 100 years or older, right? You don't just build it and forget about it. You have to continue reinvest because it can be a health and human safety issue. And then you have new regulations coming on, whether it's looking at chromium-6 or PFAS, or, you know, and water agencies have to be ready to respond to that, ensure the public that their water is regulated and safe. And then, you know, make sure your taps are on 24/7. And in this last job, when I start thinking about it, when we start getting the public angry at the water utilities for costs, I kind of go, you know, we haven't really experienced a real drought in San Diego where we're like, don't water for 4 days like they just had in LA, right? And so we're kind of like behind the scenes, and people just, our kids turn on the water and they don't think about it. They've never had to any restrictions put on them. So we've almost done too good of a job.
You know what it
We
is?
get scared.
It's called the water illogical cycle, which is a term used in water management. It goes to flood management as well. But essentially what it says is that when it's raining, everybody has water, everybody's fairly complacent about things. And then you get a drought. And there's a, you know, a reaction to that in terms of people having to do less with their lawn or whatever. And then that reaction becomes usually some greater activity, some investment in infrastructure, something. And everybody's excited about it, and you got a lot of support. And then the rain comes again. And everybody says, wait a minute, why did we spend all this money we have to now pay for? It's not really a big issue. And that happens over and over again. And to me, maybe it's not just water, it's like anything doing with resilience. I think it's the same thing. If you don't experience the pain at a time, it becomes a non-issue and people don't really care about it.
Well, we spent a lot of money on taking out turf, right? And then so now all this pavement or like non-impervious surfaces have heat islands, right? So now we're like in this we're in this like really weird loop.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
It's one of the things we discussed because we're talking about all the different facets of resiliency and like you want resilient water, but that might affect the marine life and then
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
that's interesting. But like, so anyway, yeah, there's these trade-offs between these resiliency topics. I think, yeah, we're trying to
I'm glad
think more
I'm glad
about
you're
that.
planting trees. I think trees are really important. I think Matt has a rebate for trees, so you guys should look into that because I think that will help a lot too, having trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have time for just one more quick question. I think, do you have one?
It has to be quick. Well, I guess what I wanted to comment on in the last presentation and this presentation for sure is that the resiliency impacts from a habitat perspective and the communities that are outside of the urban infrastructure and are outside where those canals are and where those transmission lines are is the space that it takes to have a reservoir or have a solar farm or whatever it is, and then the transmission to get to a space. So from a microgrid perspective, the habitat component to that is fantastic because it's already a rooftop. From a water perspective, reusing and better using it, being more efficient about the infrastructure that we already have means we don't have to build another transmission line or another canal to get water where we want it to go. So just wanted, that's kind of like for the fish, the entrainment that happens at the desal plant and all of the mitigation that's required because of that. That's why all that stuff is there, is because there are real impacts from all of this infrastructure that goes in. For my specific question, was there a proposal from the water authority to do another, to work with the Metropolitan Water Authority in some way on a new infrastructure line?
So before I came back, when we were litigating with Metropolitan, there was a study done about doing their own canal, which would then allow them not to have to pay Metropolitan to transport the water through the Colorado Aqueduct. I'm very happy to say that has been shelved.
Okay.
We've settled a lawsuit, we've agreed on a price, and so we will use the existing infrastructure to bring water. So.
Okay, thank you. That was like a year ago, right? Not too long ago, or 2 years ago?
Like a few years ago.
Okay. Thank you.
One more question.
Yes.
You mentioned that there had been lining activity at one of the canals. Has there been any consideration or work done to cover them, for example, with renewables, photovoltaics?
So there's some studies done in Turlock right now that are looking at the opportunity. My understanding is that they break when you're moving a lot of water through those canals, they will break and have to be replaced. So Turlock, I think it's about sizing. So Turlock is doing the study on it now. They put a bunch of them up there. And so we're all kind of in the industry paying attention to see how that works. And what the ROI is on that.
Before we close this out, I do just have a statement to read on behalf of the city's Public Utilities Department. We appreciate the San Diego County Water Authority's presentation and their perspective. While the city recognizes the value of their approach, we do have a different perspective on some of the key aspects of resiliency planning to protect our water supply. We look forward to returning at a future meeting to share more about the city's approach and how it aligns with our climate resiliency goals. So our Public Utilities Department, I know some staff are on the call today, but I think they are looking to come and share more about the city's work. So they of what the County Water Authority is doing as well as what the city is doing. Water is clearly very important to our region.
Yeah, and well, I mean, I hope we're doing the same thing. The city is part of the water authority. They're one of our 22 members, city.
Chair Harris, I would emphasize inviting the city PUD would be great to get their perspective on this and a real equity focus on what the bills are that ratepayers are paying and where those charges come from and how Resiliency Advisory Board could encourage the city, which we help advise on lowering those bills if at all possible, would be great for a future meeting.
And we can bring that up on item 10 as well as we go through
Okay,
that.
sorry.
No, it's a good time to bring it up twice. We do have to move on to our.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Title Warren, who's the director of our Office of Board Services, is here. I know there's been a lot of questions on board outreach, board appointment, vacancies, all of that. Chida is much better positioned to share that because she leads all of that work for the city across all of our various boards. So if you want to spend just a couple minutes, any questions that you guys have, Chida, I don't know if you want to your role and work like
that would fit under our first item, so we'll just go through that quickly and then we'll before we go into board question comment about the update we'll have her. So for item 8A, which you're going back to, we have the revised annual report and recommendations. I just saw a typo, that's a clerical error, but we incorporated, the task force incorporated everyone's suggestions from our last meeting. So if you go through, you'll see a couple extra recommendations, a timeline, a lot of other color
Yeah.
coding, which was a really good, very helpful. So kudos to Jamie and Span for.
Thanks for everyone's suggestions and
Yeah,
review.
yeah.
Well, this is where my comment on the minutes comes in, so tell me when to for that. Because I feel like there was a comment made that was incorporated in the minutes, but not in the redraft.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, I want to catch it. Well, as far as boards and commissions, we have looking ahead to fiscal year 2026, that section where we do talk about advising, intensifying recruitment efforts on the 3 still vacant seats on our part, as well as advising the mayor, and there's another type of mayor's office and city council to streamline the board appointment process and direct city staff to proactively provide the board with status updates on its efforts and progress. So this would be a good point for excited to come in.
Thank you. Hi, you guys.
Hi.
Good to see you. So I hear you have some questions. I've seen all of your names on paper, met some of you in person. Good to see you again. Thank you for your service to the city. So I oversee 44 boards and commissions, almost 500 volunteers. I was impacted by recent budget issues and staff reduction, so I am a department of 1. Additionally, I oversee 2 executive directors that oversee 2 of my commissions out of the 44. And so some of my advisory bodies have seats that are council nominated, which all of you sit in council nominated seats. And I cannot override those nominations from our council members. So if the council members do not supply us with nominations, I cannot make appointments. I am looking to change the municipal code so that after a certain grace period, I could step in and make appointments, but at the moment, I cannot do that.
I think there was a council policy, I have to go back, but it was several years ago. I don't know if it was via Ben Wesso at that time, but it was at least for some of the boards and commissions, I need to track it down where there was, it would go to the council president.
The council can appoint, I can't override their nomination.
But if they don't make one.
If they don't make one, I can't override that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so well.
Well,
The
there are,
council can appoint someone to the seat if the mayor hasn't appointed someone.
there are 2 points just want to make this, this is something that's been going on for many, many years.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that a lot of it is communicating very clearly to the council members. When I was working at with the city council member's office, we really push the nominations, grading on a curve, but even if not, we're far ahead. So I certainly understand that's a big concern. As far as our efforts next year, we can look into what we can do to advocate more to the council offices. The other part of it is the whole process for getting this approved. So from the time we all were nominated by our respective council members, it was well over a year. So we appreciate information you can share on what the whole
I
process
can finish
is.
giving my overview to me, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have 44 advisory bodies, and so specifically for this one and others similar to this one, when the council members make nominations, we take those nominations, we go through the backgrounding process. So there is a process where other people are looking at those appointments, vetting everything, and then they get docketed for city council. There are numerous reasons why appointment can be delayed. A lot of times the preference is to batch appointments just because of the process and getting something docketed. We deal with legislative recess, which our council members go through. So they might be out like the summer. Sometimes they're out for the whole month. And so I can't move any appointments through while they're out on legislative recess. Other times we have some issues where there might be a reappointment coming up from a council nomination, and then some other appointments are in the queue. So then we ideally want to batch all those together just because it could take 30 to 60 days to get something docketed for city council. In terms of when you all are first onboarded, that is not a normal process. This obviously was a very new advisory body. And so even though nominations came in, they didn't all come in at the same time. And so it's ideal to get them all together at once and then make those appointments to council at the same time. We do have a website, which I believe all of you applied through onboard. And so that's up to date, it's current. You can see when seats expire. You can see when they're vacant. You can also see when appointments are pending for those seats. So if there's ever a question about whether a seat's vacant or expired, you can definitely go to the website and look at that. Amazing staff liaison support can offer feedback as well. I communicate with the council offices once a month on the status of their vacancies and expired seats. So they get a memo from me once a month saying, hey, council member, this is a reminder, your seats on this particular advisory body are vacant or expired. If it's applicable to the advisory body, I also include the liaison in that communication. And so I have some advisory bodies, the seats have been vacant or expired for a year or more. I can't make them do anything. So usually for me with the website that I use and what you guys applied through, there's a ticker on my end that lets me know when a seat is about to expire. And so ideally I like to get those seats reappointed within the window in which the seat expired. But if the council member doesn't submit another nomination, we're back at the same space. The good thing is people can serve in an expired term.
Yeah.
So just because the seat is expired does not mean you're not still able to serve. But again, specifically for your board, a lot of this is pending council nomination. So sometimes I send applications to them. I say, hey, you got a qualified applicant here. Really would love for you to respond. I'm making this easy for you. I vetted the application. That's a thing too. Can't make them do anything. The advocacy is always helpful. We do send out information in the mayor's newsletter saying, hey, we have some vacant seats. We encourage people to apply. But that is a thing. So hopefully that explains a little bit of background on what my process is and what that looks like. I don't know if you have any additional questions.
Yes, I will push back a bit gently on just speaking about the council offices. I agree with you 100%. That's where it needs to start. But speaking with people who are looking to get who've been nominated for seats in already existing boards for a very long time, it takes again months and months. I don't know to what extent you're tracking, but be very helpful. This is more of a general matter, not just this board, but to track how long it takes from beginning to end from all the seats, which would be a great to see where we can to put in some additional accountability and to see what those roadblocks are. So I'm going to push back on that. But Stan, I think you had a
Are you
question.
referring to your board or? all the
No,
boards and
I'm
commissions?
talking about other boards and commissions. So it's very difficult. All I can do is share anecdotal information because I don't see that kind of tracking on a systematic basis, which would be terrific to get a sense of what those blocks are, because I do not believe the folks I've spoken to have some kind of problematic background. They're just very routine types of appointments that they're dealing with. So again, that's only anecdotal because we do not have that type of quantitative information, at least it's not available to the public. Sorry for that, Screed, but it has been a frustration for close to 15 to 20 years. So again, this is something that's just
Yeah.
symptomatic.
I can only speak to my role being a single person in the department overseeing 44. At one point, there were 52. So I don't know if that puts anything in perspective for you, but I literally am running the department by myself.
Yes.
I'm also overseeing a $3.6 million grant under one of my commissions. So you can take that information and also apply it in when I go through the appointment process. It's not an independent process for me. There are other people involved.
And I understand, I'm talking about something not with your office. I know that you've been working very hard and that you've been doing a great job keeping us updated. I'm talking about a systematic issue with this whole process for the city in general. So that is something that'd be helpful to look into. But again, we would need to have that quantitative data in order to talk about this in depth based on that.
I'm the only department that does it, so I'm not sure how that factors into your.
I know, it'd be a great opportunity for something like an audit. And again, I'm happy to talk about that separately because it's an issue that I've been dealing with on a personal basis as well.
We did go through audit, I think last year, so there were a bunch of recommendations that have been fulfilled and acknowledged by the audit committee. But yeah, if you want to send me an email, I don't know if you're just speaking blankly or you
Like a city auditor type of systematic. That'd be great to take a look
Absolutely,
at.
there's data about it.
That would be
It does on boards
terrific.
and commissions.
China, for people that have maybe applied for and haven't been appointed yet, is the best pathway forward for them to reach out to their council members directly and say, hey, I applied for this board. I think your
Specifically for
council-"
this board, yeah, well, and then the other thing to take note of, if folks aren't adhering to the terms on a seat that's filled for 2 to 4 years, they're not going to get appointed, the seat's filled. So that's something we outline in communication too, like I do presentations on boards and commissions. I tell people, hey, it could be a lengthy process, that there's an immediate vacancy or an expired seat in which the council member wants to replace someone sitting there. Then, you know, that's at the discretion of the council member, but there's a reality too, if individuals are serving in a seat that's already filled, it could take some time to get appointed to that seat.
Stan, did you have a question?
Thought I didn't, I have to remember. So we got, I got a note saying, are you interested in staying on? And I think I responded positively. Should I also be contacting my council person?
So
Do
we
they
do
get
that
that
too.
information?
Yeah, I communicate with them.
Okay.
So they get that. So additionally too, when people are serving on our boards and commissions, we like to give them the first right of refusal.
Yeah.
So if there's an interest and, you know, there's a belief that the advisory body's been working well together, we want to see if you want to continue to serve.
Good.
Someone can serve a max of 8 years in an advisory body. So again, that could also contribute into the delay of getting someone else appointed. If someone has been serving on the board for a significant amount of time, that person can end up waiting. But we try to streamline the process and finding out, number one, if the council member is interested in reappointing someone, and then we'll say, hey, are you also interested in being renominated for the seat?
So I know we gotta move on because we've got another agenda item that we're ready to talk about, but I have to say, I find this whole thing so very confusing because it was a year from the time I got the appointment letter until, you know, the board got convened. And then when I last went to the website, it said everybody was expired.
I know we've all.
We just started, this board has barely completed a year, and yet our 2-year term is expired. So I don't know where.
So when the seats are, when new advisory bodies are set up, the clerk's office also works with me with these boards and commissions. They're the ones that establish the clocks for each seat. So imagine your chair having a clock on it. And so the clock's been going whether you're sitting there or not. And the chair says there are 30 minutes left on the clock. Well, the clock doesn't start over just because you're sitting in the chair. You sit in the chair, let the time run out, and then we start the clock over again.
So, and then we were all asked whether we wanted to continue to serve. I, of course, said yes, because I feel like I finished my first term yet, and I don't know where that stands, whether.
So like I mentioned earlier,
Yet.
I'm waiting for other council members to complete their nominations so that I can make a batch appointment instead of sending them incrementally to council, because sometimes it could take 30 to 60 days to get an appointment through. It doesn't impact you serving though. It's just the label on the website. So in terms of you all waiting a year, that was a one-time experience. Don't let that cover the bulk.
It just meant that our first 2-year term was only a year, basically, right? Because now we're expiring after having really only served a year.
Right. And so the clerk's office is the one that establishes what that clock looks like. I'm not sure why they do that. I didn't have anything to do with that. It doesn't make sense to me either, but it doesn't have any bearing on your ability to continue serving. For me, sometimes, in other advisory bodies where there's not a nomination process from a council member, let's say there's 3 months left in the seat before it expires. Sometimes I'll go ahead and appoint someone, even if there's 30 days left, because I also know you can serve in an expired seat. I'd rather you be sitting on that advisory body and serving in an expired seat instead of me waiting for the clock to run down and then making that appointment. So it's actually worth it to me to do that, to get people working. It doesn't count against your clock as an advisory body person. So if you come in the middle of a term, it's not going to take away from the totality of you being able to serve for 8 years. We'll still make sure if that's what you want to do. Right? So that whole first year process, don't let that overshadow the whole experience. Usually it doesn't take that long, but there are a lot of other factors in play for this particular things.
I think for this board too, in the beginning, we needed enough seats to be filled. So
That's-
some appointments had been made,
That's
you
where the
got
first
your
year
appointment,
went.
but we didn't have enough.
That's exactly. You
That's
gotta
true.
make one.
Yeah, so that was part of the reason. that
Yeah.
we waited for so
Whose
long.
fault was that? Can we kind of?
People not here.
Oh, I got it.
Any other
Ian,
questions?
Ian.
Any other questions or comments? All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Erica, I think you had a comment on the updated report.
I do actually, sort of have a couple of comments to sort of start out with. The first one
Thank you for
was
coming.
that in last month's discussion, I had pointed out that in the treatment of topics, it sort of started by highlighting the city's efforts before the board was even mentioned. And I asked that the sequence be changed. And that's actually caught in the minutes. It says modify report sequence recommendation first, followed by related city efforts and carried out. So that was first thing. I felt like that didn't happen in this draft. The second thing was I still have a worry about the voice of this report. Whose voice is this in? Because it feels to me like we're really reporting on behalf of the city rather than on behalf of the board. Because it highlights so much city activity and forward planning, as well as things completed and very little of the recommendations that we are making. So I feel like our recommendations are getting buried. And then the third comment was still the point about nomenclature. You know, that's the way it was highlighted in the notes when I raised the question about goal. Because to me, a goal, and it's defined by Webster's as a long-term directional effort. You know, it may or may not have an endpoint. And yet when we get right down to it, I always thought that this board was going to be about doing some kind of endpoints, that we would have some kind of objectives, not just kind of sit around talking about things that we may or may not be able to move. So I worry about those three areas in this report.
I would say that, I agree for moving forward that we should change the nomenclature for the next annual report. And I think we'll have more recommendations. One of the things I was gonna say, even after the discussions today, we all have so much to say, and I feel like we're packing our meetings with input, but we're not having
Not
thought.
have a time.
So
to deal-
I think,
yeah,
so
right.
in terms of like this report, I feel like chalk it up to being the first year, we've been like absorbing, and we should put our, there's a reason our minds were, you know, are on this board, and we should have more, but I just, you know, we took so much that we had done, and it was more input than output. That's just what this year has been. So I think it's unfortunately reflective of that. And, you know, the action plan uses that nomenclature, so I think to change that for the report would confuse things more, even though I agree that we should change it, but it didn't make sense to change it for the report.
I just feel like in that section of the report where we're looking at topic, we should start by highlighting the board's recommendation.
I moved that for you. So
Yeah, I agree.
You did that, that is up here.
No, I mean, in
Topics.
in the section that follows.
The section that follows.
Yeah, see right here, city actions taken on the first thing you read. The recommendation is down there, and then the other three sections there don't apply necessarily to what the board's doing. Those would be city implementation actions if they were to occur. And at this point, what we're focusing on is what we said in our recommendation. To me, that's the highlight, and that's really all that belongs in that section. But, you know, it's open for discussion. That's just one person's comment. I'm just saying our recommendations that did come out of our activity and our discussions are just getting buried in a bunch of other stuff that I don't really see the need to include.
Yes, Andrew.
For the topic piece, I appreciate that Julian just changed the table listing, but for the topic piece, I think that Erica's point about the city actions, I mean, we talked about this last time about being careful not to take credit for city actions, but also not to say that the work, you know, that goes both ways. We shouldn't be reporting on city actions primarily because what the board should be doing are the other pieces that are in here, and that's what we should be emphasizing. I appreciate, I mean, I think it's useful context to have the city actions in there, so it shows where the city is going, and then you can cross-reference whether that meets the recommendations or not. So I don't want to lose that, or I wouldn't be for losing that, I guess, because it's already written too. But I think that in the Word version of the topics, the city actions could go last as just a description of what the city is doing on their own, you know, train track.
If you guys
which
want
is
to take a
separate.
vote on that, I will make the edits. I do want to also just call out this last sentence here, kind of on that same thread of thought. We wanted to add in that the city actions taken were really on what had been reported, presented to the board, and that you were aware of, and that that's like the context in which your recommendations were coming out, that this is not meant to be a like, here's everything the city is doing on SB 99, because it's not, and that's not the board's like responsibility. So I think that hopefully helps clarify that a little bit and maybe provide some context of like, these are here because these are presentations that were presented to the board.
What if we
for-
call, sorry.
Yeah, go
What
ahead.
if we call it city context or context instead of city actions taken? Because I could see how that would come off as like, in response to our recommendations, the city did this, which none of us think is true. That's not what
You
happened.
could just
But
say
it's
prior city
context.
action. Do you mean like prior city
Yeah,
action?
or, yeah, something like that. I mean.
Some of it's contemporaneous. So.
The city actions are also in the chart, but then they're repeated again in the text from the bottom.
Is it necessary then to have them in the table because they're discussed further and then this just gives a highlight what the recommendations are?
I was gonna go the other way, and say, do we need to have that? It's already in the chart.
I feel like they don't need to be in the chart if it's the board recommendations that we're highlighting. And the summary table should just be of our board recommendations, if people want a quick glance at what we did. And then we can go into the context of that in the following sections.
I would agree with that.
Sure.
Dude, I triple that.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so if we're doing it one at a time, because Julia has it up. So far is the question to remove the city actions taken from the chart and just have the recommendations. Make sure I follow that correctly. Okay, so a motion? Who would like to?
I'll move to remove the city actions column from the summary table of topics and recommendations.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Sure.
Oppose? Okay, so it passes.
You seconded
Can't
that?
delete tables and chart changes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I actually know that. I don't know if I want this on in my life without it. I learned.
Do the rough version now and clean it up a bit later. All right.
Do you want to change the order that's in the text below?
Well, could someone explain to me the utility of the sections? Stakeholders coordination, recommended public engagement, possible funding, and how that relates to the effort of this board. Because again, it's a question of voice. Who is writing this report? This board is writing this report, so it's our activity that it seems to me to need to be highlighted.
I just think we are a city board and we are. I just think it's good context. I mean, I
Well, it's
really
reading
do.
this.
I mean, why are we having everybody come in and give presentations if we're not gonna use that to inform our recommendations? And if somebody didn't read all the minutes and didn't watch all the videos of our meetings, you know, this stuff would inform like them understanding why we recommended what we recommended and why it was relevant.
I have a
Yes,
comment.
ma'am.
Yeah,
And then Andrews.
since I was the one that had to write this section, so. So when we, as a task force group, whatever we were, started out to try to get the annual report done, one request was for everybody to fill out recommendations in a certain format. And that's what's reflected there. That was the ask of every board member was, if you got a recommendation, provide not only a recommendation, but funding sources and all this other information. That's where that came from. So that part of it is just, that's the way we asked for the information. So that's how we provided it. The other part, I do think you said it best. It's just context. I think it's a mistake for us to make recommendations that look like they're related to things the city's been doing without acknowledging it, because it looks like we're kind of like making recommendations in a vacuum. So the hope there is to connect what is going on with our activities and to say, here's some additional thoughts that haven't already been addressed. We know these other things exist. So it's not like we don't know what's going on, but we still have some recommendations on top of that. And that's the format you see there. Obviously, it can be changed.
Yes, I'll mention before we go to Andrews, the reason the form is, and we can certainly change that later. It is to provide that context because our audience is the city council and the mayor's office. So to make it more of a one-stop shop, so they have all the information they need right there and what the heck the recommendation is talking about, instead of having to go look at a different source. So that's where that was coming from. So we could discuss if that's if that has utility or not. Andrew.
The only comment that I had reading this before all these other good comments came out was that one of the audiences I think we should be thinking about is the public from this report. So like changing the table so that if the public looks at this, the table is the first thing they see. They only need to, you know, that our recommendations should be the one thing that is most easily portable. But I was also going to say, I know that there's at the very end, there's a link to the all of the meeting, the link to the website where all of the meetings are shared. And for the public, for anybody who's wondering what we did and then sees this cool topic that they're jazzed about, I think we should make this final report, you know, and for a council member or council member staff, can we hyperlink topic 3 wildfire resilience to the meeting notes, the meeting date at which that happened, or some way where we can share the presentations that we've gotten more quickly through these topics? And I think that would go some way towards the problem. For me, at least, it would answer some of Erica's problem about what is the purpose of this. We should front load our recommendations about what we've gotten from it. But it would also, I think, hit Jamie's concern is that the context and all of the presentations, the input that we're getting is also part of what we should be doing, is sharing that input as best as possible. And so the Byzantine webpage where you've got to find the date and then find the presentation, that's all there. It's all shareable. But if we could share it, I think better through this by linking it to that topic or saying, you know, find this date's discussion here or something like that, better than we have so far.
That helps.
Ava?
Yes, I agree with that. I think hyperlinking would be really useful, if folks want to go back and look at like the PDFs and things like that. I know that like for me, especially like as a board member, it's like hard to like, you know, click through things. So it'd be nice to have a one-stop shop for that. But on like the topic of Erica's original comment, now that we've kind of changed this table into like, okay, this is like the city this is our recommendations to the council in this table. I think we can actually build out the text that comes beneath it to be a little bit more like flushed out, and like instead of having these sections just kind of like in a paragraph like summarize kind of the reasoning why we took these actions based on the context that was given to us. So kind of combining the city actions taken and the stakeholder coordination and interweaving it with our thought process for the recommendation. I think that would flow a lot better and provide more context to people who are reading to like fully understand like why we took the steps we took, rather than like just kind of having them sectioned out and like siloed from each other. And then it allows us a little bit of flexibility with the formatting as well.
How do you anticipate that would look?
I think it would just be like a paragraph of text for each topic, rather than having these like mini sections with headers of like city actions taken, recommendations and things like that. It would just be more so like the topic and then like a block of text. That's like in 2024 or in 2025, like these maps were made. In their presentation, they mentioned this. The board decided to go with this recommendation for X, Y, and Z reason. Kind of just like smushing all of this, the title, the sections, the subsections together.
I really like that approach. My only comment would be, I think that would be great going forward. Recall, we got these recommendations from individual board members. They are not essentially a product of board discussion on that topic. Like a couple of them we did, a couple of them we didn't, right? So I think that's one of the problems we had, just like writing the narrative, is because we never had that discussion. It came from a board member. It looked like a valid recommendation, and we tried to provide all those in this report. Even though we've never had really a detailed board discussion about why would we do this versus that. And that's just, to me, that's just our first year, you know, kind of we're stumbling into this, let's get going. But I think going forward, this particular format may be much improved. I think you got a good point.
So maybe it is for the future. I think it would, I mean, are we allowed to like discuss those recommendation forms here, like in the future?
Yeah, we could have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that'd be
I
good.
think this year was particularly tough. One, because it's your first year, so you had a lot to do and get done, and just even like setting up bylaws, like that was a lot of work to get the board up and running. Two, I think unfortunately, just like not meeting quorum in July and then being on recess in August was tough timing wise. That I think next year, maybe as you're looking at the work plan, I'm thinking about like when are recommendations due, having maybe like almost a full meeting that's really focused on providing that space for that deliberation, because I think we were just kind of ran out of time and meeting space for it this year.
But this is a good discussion.
I mean, I was kind of saying this earlier, but I think almost every meeting, I would propose that we do maybe one presentation and leave like an hour for conversation between us. Like, I don't think all the work that we're trying to produce needs to be done in task forces offline. Like, it just, I don't think it's serving anybody well to only have a few minds on each of these initiatives. And it'd be fun and I think more productive to talk about this stuff together when we are together.
Generally, our direction too is then you're having those discussions in a public forum, public is
Yeah.
able to listen in, to hear the
Yeah.
deliberation or to watch it later. Versus the ad hoc task force are great when they're really discrete tasks, but
Sorry.
we want this to be a public space
Yeah,
for
exactly.
conversation.
Good point.
That'd be cool.
I just wanted to say, because I wasn't at the last meeting, I think this is a really good report and format, and I think for our first year, it's great. I do like the idea of adding more context and items, but I think we also are trying to finalize this today so we can get it done. My only comment was for stakeholders and coordination. Is there a different title? Because some of the stakeholders and coordination we did coordinate with, some of them we did not. So I don't know if we need to caveat that it's like potential stakeholders for future coordination, or maybe there's a shorter phrase.
Well, I have a question. Who are we directing to do this stakeholder coordination? Is that something we as a board are saying we're going to do? Or is it something we're suggesting the city do? To me, I go back to, it's simpler if we just take those three sections out, because it's not clear who we're addressing them to. And, you know, stakeholders and coordination could be, there's, as we heard in our public engagement presentation, a long list of stakeholders for a lot of things. And yet that's not the purpose of this plan, you know. So I don't really, I'm still very ambivalent about those sections, those three headings. I understand that that's the way the recommendations were formatted, but to me, it doesn't add anything to this. It's only more confusing.
I think these two, the stakeholder coordination and the recommend public engagement and education, I don't know that those were always part of the board member recommendations. I did like the previous idea to maybe have like city context and retitle that. So that maybe it's, you have the recommendation first and then the second is city context beneath it. And then I would leave it up to the board members if you want to continue to keep these sections in here, or if you think it's cleaner to pull these sections out and just have the recommendation and then the city context following it.
And
I guess,
another option, just because that relates to it, is if we take another look and see that the stakeholders are pretty much similar for most of the recommendations, you could pull that out to sidebar, say something like, you know, here are the, something like that. And sorry, go ahead, Eric.
sorry, what I was just gonna say is, I think some of these we are asking for an outreach plan. So I think in that case, it is good to say, so if a city council member picks us up or it gets directed, is this is an outreach plan, and this is more detail on either how to do it or do it with. But not everything is exactly direct staff to prepare an outreach plan.
While we're editing in real time, the one comment is that I think, if I understand it correctly, we have 6 topics in the chart.
Yes.
Table. Okay, and I think this 5th one in this table is the 6th one on the description.
Yeah.
But it's, okay. Great.
Yeah.
But it's also named.
Yeah, we have 2 5s.
Oh.
We have 2 5s.
We like 5 so much.
They're all 5s.
Yeah.
Five, so right,
And is this supposed to be 5?
Six.
And then this is supposed to
Oh.
be 6, Andrew? Is that
Yes.
what you're saying? Okay.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know if the timing, if it reflects timing, but in the table, the one that you
I think
highlighted
that
is
was
topic
just a-
6.
I still just think it makes sense, like we're making a recommendation for the city. I think we should switch the city actions to, context. But then, and then move the recommendation up first, but the rest of it, to me, just makes sense. If we're making a recommendation, those are those are like the details that's drawn out into easy reading for whoever from the city would take that off, who they should coordinate with, which stakeholders matter for this. If they have, maybe what we need to do is add something at the bottom, like a note for the city departments who receive these recommendations is to reach out if you like, who need clarification or something, because I mean, I don't know, it's very easy to read.
I like adding potential in front of it.
Okay.
Now,
And I
the
feel like
other
the
thing
word
that,
coordination doesn't, I feel like it should be like stakeholders and departments, maybe city departments, or just like organization. I don't know,
But
maybe
they're
it's
not
just
all
about
city.
stakeholders.
Just potential stakeholders.
Yeah, potential stakeholders.
because I think the other
That
thing
makes a
that,
lot more
That's
sense to
fine,
me
yeah,
than
that's
what
fine.
we had originally.
You could
It's
also do
feeling-
like city departments. And then,
because I think the other thing that feels complicated to me is whether we are substituting our judgment for that of the city. Because clearly the city folks know with whom they need to coordinate. We may or may not have an inclusive list there. By putting the word potential in front, that helps.
Yeah,
Yeah. So now this reads to me now as we have 3 different sections for recommendations in each topic. This, I think we can even put the city context all the way at the bottom now, so that the 3 recommended sections are above it. And it
Yeah.
reads really well to me
Yeah.
after that, yeah.
agree.
I don't know this well enough, I haven't looked at it in detail, but are the recommended public engagement and education and the potential stakeholders, the folks who presented during that, about that topic in the meeting, like in terms of sharing information that's already on our website? I was thinking that the stakeholders and coordination were people who already gave us input.
No,
No, maybe, but not definitely.
right,
Yeah.
it
okay.
might include them. Like,
Because if we can
I don't
link
think we
those.
had any faith groups come talk to us, for instance.
Yes, okay.
Maybe part of the confusion can be addressed by taking recommended public engagement education, putting that after recommendation. If it's, since it's our recommendations type of outreach,
Oh, sure.
that we're putting all the recommendations up
Yeah.
front. See how that looks.
I think the others, this is a very stupid formatting thing for me, but those 3 things that follow are essentially bullets to me supporting the recommendation and could be made title with a hyphen and then go right into the rest of the sentence. So it doesn't look like a heading. So
Not the
I don't-
recommended public engagement education, since that's coming
So
from
pull
us.
block by block canvassing right back behind that.
Do you want to indent it or bullet?
Indented, so that it actually reads as a recommendation.
you want this and that.
A support to the central recommendation. So what I'm saying is take recommended public education activity, dash after that and bring block by block canvassing right up behind the heading like that. And then make those 3 recommended potential stakeholders, possible funding as clearly sort of secondary support points to the recommendation like that.
Might be easier just to indent it with 3 points, saying how, what do
So
you,
that those would be bulleted also, recommended public education, potential stakeholders, possible funding on like 3 bullet areas. I could do this so simply. I'm sorry. I should have done that. You should. So that they're more like explanatory statements and
That makes sense.
Do you like this?
we're gonna, yeah. Recommended public education in the same way.
Just for everyone's awareness.
See the top of the three, top.
I'm the
September
same way,
battery
Erica.
left, so
I
we're running
do
on borrowed
this for
time.
other departments too.
This is like
I
bringing
know,
it together
I
and
see
then.
what you're saying.
Because I think what we've been saying in our conversation is public education, stakeholders and grants are all in support of our recommendation.
Yeah.
Right? Their additional explanation or helpful ideas.
Do you want this indented too?
Yes, please.
Is that our
But see the way that you have it wrapping around block by block canvassing and all that.
You want
So I
all
would
of
put
this
a
in the
bullet in
indented?
front of the recommended one. But
Do you want, like, what, do you want this bulleted and then
Yes.
these just indented to
No,
further from
all
this
of the,
bullet?
all the three of those I would bullet, the bolded one, and then I would make paragraphs.
Next to them, so you don't want these bulleted,
Correct.
but it's just a list. But then we have two categories of our list, which is weird.
It doesn't, I mean, I think this is where we get hanging all about this and just. For me, I'm trying to make it clear that this is.
If it's just
sent
formatting, can we
subsidiary.
let Erica do it after that?
Yeah.
Well,
And do we need to like vote after or something?
yes, I'm keeping
Good
track.
idea.
So we had the change around from, change it to city, from action to city context, put the recommendation up front. We could word it as something like, indent the other items below our recommendations.
I'm just gonna say formatting so that the recommendation stands out.
Yeah. Is this what we
That's
wanted?
exactly, that's exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
if we have it for one section, then it's easier to recreate for all
Yeah.
the other sections.
And the city context remains.
Colons,
Its own thing.
Okay.
got a dash and then two colons.
There, see, that hangs together.
Do you want these to be colons?
I prefer the dash, but you can do what you want.
Yes, I agree.
There's too many colons.
Could add to a potential motion in a visually pleasing manner.
Yes, I think what I had written is that the board edits live the document to read more clearly for the city and the public. And then some things that on there are city, change city action to city context, formatting so that the recommendations stand out.
Thank
I
you
mean, I
for
have a
giving us
lot.
all credit for this. I'm not just here.
Well, it has become a board product nowadays.
There we go.
Well, there was a lot of comment.
Yeah.
I do have a lot of stuff prior to that about each person's stuff, and then I gave up. It's a collaborative discussion.
Should we take a?
And then the
vote for
hyperlink.
Oh, yes, the hyperlinks.
That's also in
That's a
here.
great idea.
So we have hyperlinking to, yes. Yes, so we have hyperlink to the meeting materials hyperlinks from each recommendation to the relevant meeting minutes and materials. Is that
Mhm.
accurate? And then the changes we just talked about, changing it from the wording to city context, as you said, making the recommendation stand out, and I'm probably leaving something out. Clerical errors corrected, which we don't really need to vote.
So I'll just make a comment that I ran the colors through a colorblind checker and it looks okay.
Good.
Oh, great.
I did change your colors a little
I
bit.
didn't even know that was a thing.
Nice, thank
I
you.
didn't know there was a checker. So the only other thing I had in here from before was removing that column. But I think we voted on that one. Yeah, so we're good. on that, yeah.
And that's what made, that's in there.
Any other discussion on
And
those
you didn't
points?
vote.
Any other comments, or does someone want to make a motion? Or should we could, of course, discuss it, so, right? Andrew made a motion, moved,
A second.
all right, you second, any discussion?
Thank you for accommodating my formatting
Looks better.
twitches.
So just so I'm clear, the motion is with the proposed edits that have been made to adopt the annual report as it is.
If there is a small error, if you want to do that now, which is all the way at the end.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, it's in the looking ahead to fiscal year 2026, paragraph 2, second sentence, we advise the mayor's office instead of just the mayor's.
Didn't realize that was the motion I was making. That's a heavy motion, but that is the motion. I was making a motion to make these changes, but then, right, make these changes and then adopt it. That's the motion we need. That's why the motion.
Still have a second for that?
Second agrees.
All right. All in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Did it.
We're gonna vote separately on the hyperlink.
So I had that all fun.
Change
I
the
guess-
font. Don't
Let me
really
get
like the font.
Are there any other changes or are we adopting with those?
No.
It's in the motion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all.
Adopt. With like assuming the changes are made, when this goes, when we have a draft, what we can do,
Hear more.
is circulate it, and then, I will circulate individually if there's like a hyperlink you think I missed or something, we can make those adjustments.
You're gonna do all these edits?
Yeah. If one of the ad hoc subcommittee members wants to do them, certainly welcome your support. If you don't want to, I can make the edits. It's fine.
We can do a detailed look through after that. It's always good to have several eyes on it anyway.
Thank you, Jamie and Sam, for taking
Thank
the
you.
first cut at or several cuts at this. And
I want to say, I also really appreciated the section about rationalizing the calendar. That was really helpful. Made a lot of sense.
All right, so I'll move on to item 8B. This, it could be a short one. If it's longer, we could table it till the next meeting. This is for board chair outreach, which should also be board chair as necessary, board vice chair, board secretary as,
Board officer.
yes, board officers. Now we have adopted the annual report. I would like to reach out to the different environment committee member offices, if possible, set up a quick meeting to go through the report with them and or their staff in advance of the meeting.
In advance of the environment committee
Yes.
meeting in November.
Yes.
In advance of the November environment committees for that, it gives a very specific deadline. When is the November?
November
13th, I believe.
So
Yeah, the
are we just motioning to have this meeting? Is that what what's going
Are
on?
we motioning to authorize the chair to reach out?
Technically, I could, but I would rather have everyone's blessing on that. And if there's any suggestions you have on the approach, that would be helpful as well.
A motion to recommend that you, reach out and coordinate with the environmental committee before the meeting on, what was it, November 13th?
I second that.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. All in favor?
Can I?
Oh.
Well, do we discuss next?
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Discussion.
Well, in terms of advice for meeting with them, the only thing I would say is that all of the environment committee members in January or February created here's what I want to accomplish in the environment committee. So if you can reference and make them feel like, hey, we're doing what you already thought you wanted to do, that's always helpful. I don't know whether it relates to any of this stuff, but surely something they say would relate to one of these topics that we were also recommending, and that's a good way of like a good hook.
That's a great suggestion. Piggyback on that and say, and also ask them, do you want to give us your thoughts about 2026?
I think committee members do that, but not the chair. The chair makes the final like composite one, so Hilo Rivera might not have one of his own, but the other committee members should. That's Hilo Rivera.
All right, any other discussion? All right, take a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously with everyone in the room at the moment. And these are great suggestions, which means I'll have to start reaching out fairly quickly. So Julia, you will follow up on that.
Yeah, you can reach out to myself and then also try to can help with the like outreach to the environment committee members.
Okay, you. Perfect. All right, so item 8C is for bylaws. So we were just mentioning if we want to do certain things by task force or not. This was for the actual writing of, we don't necessarily need one. So the question is, should we create an ad hoc task force to review the bylaws, or would you prefer we just do this live at our next meeting, which is item 10?
Could someone explain why we need to review the bylaws?
This is at the end of the year, we've given the bylaws a test ride. There have been a number of separate comments about ways we can improve how we meet. So this would be the opportunity to make those changes. For example, just in this meeting, Jamie made the point, should we look at having just one presentation per meeting and then dedicating or reserving the rest of it to discussion? There's also been discussion about changing the order of the agenda so that presenters can go first instead of having to wait for us to go through our business. So that's an example of things that we would have to change the bylaws in order to make it the structural changes.
I guess I understand the second example rather than the first. I don't know that we need to have in our bylaws how many presentations we have about. That seems like a degree of granularity that might make us regret it later.
You might want to leave more flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna recommend, instead of a task force, maybe we add an agenda item to
Okay.
consider changes. If they are just that simple, then we can just make them, or if we then decide we have more comprehensive, we can form one then.
Okay.
Based on our conversation of like the live editing just now, I would prefer for us to have a live discussion about it.
Good thing we made that item.
And
Steve.
Julia has so much fun doing it.
I do.
Get you an extra battery.
And I think I just need to make my charger cord. I think we're gonna make it like this.
I have strong feelings about superscripts and subscripts, so I'm ready to get into it next meeting.
All right.
And which format, citation style. APA.
ELA, Chicago.
So we can hold off on that because it does go into item 10, so we can go straight into that since we're already.
So I'll add a B, review bylaws for the future agenda.
Yes, well, it's on 10 A, so November, we could, because the end of the year, we go dark on December, is to focus the large chunk, or depending how long it takes, if we get to the weeds, as we're talking about superscript and subscript, to go over the bylaws and make any amendments as needed.
I would like to have a debrief discussion on the energy presentation today. So I think he did go through so much, we didn't have any time to talk about it at all.
You might also want a debrief on the environment committee. Presentation, I mean, the week after that meeting.
And I was just removing, do we have presentation scheduled for November?
We have one confirmed, so Lindsay Hawes from our services department is going to come and present on some of the city's energy resilience work. I do not believe we have any others confirmed at this point in time. PUD is going to come into a kind of like PUD 101 with everything that they are working on. But we can certainly move that to January if needed. I would say my recommendation is that we maybe move that one to January and then we don't add anything else to the agenda, because I think you probably are full with one presentation and then 3 things for discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm even wondering whether we need climate change implication for homelessness.
I'm just striking that off, so we don't.
Yeah, because I'm like, I agree. We are having some wonderful presentations and no time to.
I'm gonna write maybe 2026 for that.
Sure.
And then PUD, we're gonna say 2026, okay.
And we should discuss probably briefly next month, how we're gonna go forward with the work plan. I would suggest having a task force for that, because that would be very unwieldy, but there's different ways we can go about providing input to that.
I think it'd be good to instead of like the task force doing the first draft, like do what we did today for like 10 minutes, and then they can put all of our thoughts together because they've heard that. Like, I think we want to definitely change some of the terminology from last time, you know, the priority versus primary and stuff like that. So I think it'd be good to have the first discussion here and then have a ad hoc.
So we have the Lindsay Haas, city's energy resilience, discuss, or debrief on the energy discussion from today, a debrief on the environment committee, and then going through, bylaws, and then preparing for the 2026, which will be, a longer one because it's covering the rest of the fiscal year and then doing the whole fiscal year cycle again. Having a discussion on what should go into that and then deciding on an ad hoc task force to put that all together into a document. So I'd say before the next meeting, just everyone take the time to go through our bylaws and our annual work plan and see how we can say amp it up, but make things better for year 2. I think I got everything.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. We don't need to take a vote on that since we'll just,
Can I add an item to it?
probably not for November, but.
No, this wouldn't be, it says future meetings, isn't it?
Okay, yes.
Future meetings.
Okay, for next, 2026.
I just want to capture my thought today because I forget things. And I'm seeing how my note was. So I'd be interested in having some kind of discussion with the board about how physical reliability, fiscal sustainability, and social equity connect and how they fit maybe into our board role as a future topic.
So it was physical, what, reliability,
Reliability,
fiscal,
sustainability,
And social equity.
and social equity. I know I had this picture in my mind, and I don't even know if it's such a thing, but you know how there's a scale of 2, parts to it balancing. What this came to me was like a 3 scale thing where you're balancing 3 different things. I don't even know if there is such a thing, but that's what popped into my mind. Yeah.
That's 3 things.
Yeah.
there's a tripod comparison somewhere there.
I'll look it up. Maybe there is such a thing. I don't know. It just came.
Andrew,
I,
yes.
for future meetings, not for November, I think Stan mentioned this, but what I was thinking earlier with that, it would be nice if the PUD responded to the water authorities, illuminated their written response that Julia gave earlier. Love to know more about that. It would be great to, I think, specifically look at the water rates that folks are paying and the equity component of those and get more information from the water authority too. And then also just Ann Fahey's comment at the beginning about street trees. I would love to learn more from the city arborist and learn more about the equity component and the resiliency connections to our street tree programs and where they are planted, what's invested in different neighborhoods around the city, including those particular trees.
Are you looking to make this a joint meeting with Community Forestry Advisory Board or have them involved so there's overlap there?
If I guess, can I keep track of what Anne is able to bring to that board and whether she gets resolution on that?
Yeah.
And if she doesn't get resolution, then bring it up with a little more detail
That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Erica?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I guess I'm thinking about the various energy presentations that have been mentioned, what Lindsay is doing on the one hand, and wondering whether it might make sense to have PUD's response to the water rates before that.
So that's just staff availability of be able to present.
Right, but could she not move it to January?
She could, but I'm not sure that PUD would necessarily be able to attend in November.
I see. I'm just thinking it's gonna make most sense in my little brain to have the 2 close together, but maybe that can't be done.
I'm making a note for our discussion on the FY 2026 work plan to talk about types of presentations that we would like to see so we can get all those lined up on a list.
And whether we're gonna, and to what extent this will guide us, have a theme for the year. I made no secret of pushing the energy topic, but it may or may not be timely.
Yeah, I think we can go more in depth next month.
Yeah, when we talk about goal, priority, objective, topic.
Nomenclature.
I can, I will check with TUD staff though and see if they're able to attend, and then I can swap the presentations for November.